This is something that I think is so important. The whole Jeffrey Epstein thing, and I have to say, in a way, the American right kind of made this monster and it's now sort of attacking them, where it became like every person who ever talked to Jeffrey Epstein, who ever met Jeffrey Epstein, somehow had suspicion on them that they were a pedophile or had an interest in under.
This is not damage control anymore. It is a counter-strike collapsing in real time. Everyone thought this empire was untouchable, polished music, insulated by money and silence until the response exposed more than the leak itself. What music just surfaces is not a denial but a reaction. A sudden legal push, posts disappearing, music major outlets going quiet, and one rival deciding to press harder instead of backing off. All unfolding publicly and fast. Within hours of the Epstein file release, Jay-Z's name spreads through an FBI intake record tied to a 1996 Florida property. And almost immediately, 50 Music sent posts that he wants a documentary. Then escalates after warnings allegedly land. Jay-Z is then rumored abroad. Beyoncé's follow account reportedly drops by the millions, and the silence from their usual media allies becomes absolute. None of that matches a story that is supposed to be harmless. The timing is wrong. The reactions are too coordinated and the retreat is too visible. Whatever mechanism is activating here is older, heavier, and it is already moving toward consequences no statement can stop. So first I think we just have to say, and you set it up well, there are two real storylines here. One is what is in these files that we can see and that we can actually learn. We're going to get on that first. There's also the story about what is not in these files, or what is heavily redacted, because that is also sparking. The response inside the Carter circle hardens almost immediately, and that reaction becomes the story. As the Epstein files circulate, people close to the situation say the priority is not clarification, but containment, and the signs show up fast. Posts referencing the file begin to vanish. Gossip accounts go quiet. Major outlets that usually sprint toward controversy hesitate or skip it entirely. At the same time, messages start moving through legal channels, not public ones, and the name most often attached to that pressure is Beyoncé's. Music industry sources describe a familiar pattern: suppress the spread, starve the oxygen, remind people where their access comes from. It is the opposite of how an innocent misunderstanding usually gets handled. Music, the silence does not feel calm, it feels coordinated, and that coordination becomes impossible to ignore once it collides with someone who has no interest in staying quiet. That collision arrives publicly on January 31st when 50 Music sent posts a blunt message reacting to Jay-Z's name appearing in the Epstein material, writing, "Dan, they got your man Jay in the Epstein files. I got to do a doc on this stuff." The post does not read like curiosity. It reads like provocation. Within hours, memes follow, then AI imagery, then mocking captions that suggest he knows exactly which nerves he is hitting. Music people around him say the tone shifts after alleged legal warnings surface. Not softer, but sharper. Music, instead of backing down, he escalates, teasing the idea of exposure and daring anyone to stop him. In an industry trained to respond to threats with compliance, his refusal becomes disruptive all by itself. The surface explanation offered quietly is that Jay-Z's name appears only in an unverified FBI intake record logged in July 2019 and tied to an alleged incident at a Florida property in 1996. That is supposed to be the end of it. No charges, no follow-up, no confirmation, but the reactions music do not line up with that script. Jay-Z does not issue a denial. He does not send representatives into the press cycle. Instead, reports begin circulating that he leaves the United States entirely, a move people close to the couple describe as temporary music, but never clearly explain. At the same time, analytics accounts claim Beyoncé's online following drops by the millions in a matter of days, a visible sign of public unease that her team does not address. These are not the moves of people confident the story will burn out on its own. So, what happens now is this is simply a civil complaint. And in a civil complaint it goes through music, the technical legal process. Now the distinction, Jessica, between civil and criminal, of course, is that civil is for monetary damages, right? The system can't only reward you with money. There's allegations that this 13-year-old is suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, suffered depression, etc. So, now you go to fact-find. Here's where the story starts to bend. If the mention is meaningless, why does it trigger such aggressive suppression? If the intake record is unreliable, why not confront it head-on? Insiders point out that Beyoncé has spent years building an image of control, precision, and absolute authority over her brand, and that this moment tests that machinery. Music, legal pressure replaces public reassurance. Silence replaces explanation. People who normally speak for the Carters suddenly cannot be reached. Even allies appear hesitant, as if waiting for instruction. Music, the vacuum invites speculation, and that speculation is exactly what the containment strategy is supposed to prevent. Instead, music it grows. What fuels that growth is the contrast between who stays quiet and who does not. 50 Cent keeps posting. Music he references his recent documentary success dismantling another powerful figure, reminding everyone he knows how to turn allegations into content and attention. Music he jokes about smelling beef and popcorn, framing the situation as entertainment while making clear he is not intimidated. Industry veterans note that this is not random trolling, it is strategic pressure. By refusing to let the conversation fade, he forces the Carters' response or lack of one into sharper focus. Every hour without a statement makes his insinuations feel heavier. The media landscape amplifies the tension. Music, fans notice that outlets known for breaking celebrity scandals do not touch the story or quietly remove mentions. Screenshots circulate showing posts deleted without explanation. Music people begin asking whether this is coincidence or influence. Beyoncé's name comes up again and again, not as a subject of the allegation, but as the person with the leverage to make stories disappear. That perception alone shifts music, the narrative. The question stops being what happened in 1996 and becomes what is happening now and who is controlling it. If we get to the bottom of Tupac, music when that is finally revealed, 15 others will be revealed with it. And you will find that music, they were all committed by the same two people, father and son. As the days pass, the rumor of Jay-Z being abroad hardens into accepted fact in online circles, even as no official confirmation appears. Music people close to the couple insisted is precautionary, but cannot explain why precaution is necessary. Others whisper that leaving the country buys time while lawyers work. None of those explanations account for why the couple does not simply deny the claims outright. The lack of clarity feeds a darker interpretation that responding publicly risks opening doors better left shut. Music, in that context, Beyoncé's role looks less like protection and more like command, directing a shutdown while hopping the storm passes. By music, now, the original allegation almost feels secondary to the behavior surrounding it. A single intake record leads to legal warnings, mass silence, music, social media fallout, and a rival openly daring the empire to react. Each piece on its own might be dismissed. Together, music, they form a pattern that refuses to settle. The more the Carters pull inward, the more space they create for outsiders to define the story. And as 50 Cent continues to poke at that space, the question hanging over everything is no longer whether this will escalate, but how much pressure the system can absorb before something breaks. What starts to surface now is that this moment does not exist in isolation. And people inside the industry start drawing lines backward instead of forward. Epstein's shadow hangs over it not because of one file, but because of what his world represents. Powerful figures orbiting private spaces, accusations treated as administrative problems, and reputations preserved through silence and leverage. Insiders point out that the playbook unfolding around the Carters looks familiar to anyone who has watched similar crises before. When proximity becomes dangerous, the priority, music, shifts to minimizing exposure, not addressing substance. That instinct alone reframes the current reaction as learned behavior, not panic. The deeper implication is that this is not the first time these defenses have been tested. Only music, the first time someone with nothing to lose keeps pushing from the outside. What I've gathered from your articles, this seems to be a global network that Epstein was a part of, and I believe there are multiple Epstein, like I don't believe that Jeffrey Epstein was the head of the snake. Yeah, like they never go after the head of the snake. They never go after the head of the snake, quote unquote, or just it's the billionaire class. And so there's a faction of these billionaires' music in our oligarchy. And of course, the American oligarchy, the American oligarchs don't necessarily, a lot of them, don't have an allegiance necessarily to the United States. As attention widens, older stories that once lived on the margins begin snapping back into focus. For years, whispers circulate about X.